Hello, welcome once again to Leto's Law. I'm Steve Leto. Going to talk about a sovereign citizen question, and people ask me if I could address some more of the sovereign citizen arguments. And the problem is that they're scattered all over the place. And as soon as you shoot one down, someone goes, "Well, what about this?" As if that didn't just destroy their argument. And then you shoot that down, they go, "Oh, well, fine, what about this?" And you go, "Wait a second. You can't just keep losing arguments and then just say, well, I'm not losing because I keep coming up with new ones." You need to come up with some good arguments first that are defensible. And so one of the crazy arguments that you see over and over again, and I'm not even going to try to explain why this would even matter, except that there's a weird belief among some people out there that the United States government is actually a corporation. And as a corporation, it is a for profit entity that someone presumably can buy stock in, and if you own stock in this corporation, you can make money off of it. And then all the people who pay taxes are just basically giving their money to a corporation to be paid to, I guess, the shareholders. And if you don't understand this, and of course you've taken the wrong pill from that guy in the movie, even though that's not real life, that's a movie. So again, it's hard to go around and stomp out all the little fires of the dumb arguments. But I do want to point out one of the most obvious ones that just, it pains me whenever people make this argument. But if you look on the internet and look up is the United States government really a corporation? You'll get people who will say, yeah, and it follows the same logic as the people who claim that an automobile is only an automobile if you're using it in commerce. And then they point to that one statute that says in this chapter, the following definitions apply. And they talk about automobiles being used in commerce. And that chapter, of course, is talking about the federal laws against hijacking. So yes, if you're a hijacker and you hijack a car that is not being used in commerce, you can then claim you are not hijacking an automobile under that statute. For what good that'll do you. However, of course, the problem is that you or I, to drive an automobile, need a driver's license because we are in fact driving an automobile, and it's a motor vehicle, and all these things apply. So getting to the argument about the Constitution, I've heard several arguments, but one of the most obvious and stupid arguments that's made is the one that says the United States government is a corporation, and it's easily provable because it's right there in the statutes. And they always send you to some obscure corner of the United States Code. And the cool thing is you can now look this stuff up yourself. And that's the double-edged sword, of course, because people look it up and they go, oh my gosh, this person's right. There is a thing in the US code that says this. So I found an entire website, and I will not post a link, and if you post it, I'll strike it. I do not want to see anyone promoting this stuff on my website. I'm sorry. It's stupid, so don't do it. So 28 USC section 3002. I don't mind if you cite this. I just don't want you citing the websites that cite this. So 28 USC 3002 says, as used in this chapter, United States means, here's the definition of the United States, according to the US Code, 28 USC 3002. The United States means a federal corporation. Boom. Game over. And I've actually seen people say that. They go, yeah, Steve, right there, it's a statute. Are you telling me the laws don't apply? The laws obviously apply. That's a law. 28 U.S.C. Code 3001, subsection 15A says United States means a federal corporation. Boom. Okay, you might get sick of my sound effects, so I'll stop that now. But the funny thing, of course, is that it says, that's A, there's B, and there's a C. United States means a federal corporation. B, an agency, department, commission, board, or other entity of the United States. Or C, an instrumentality of the United States. So the first thing you have to notice is the use of the word or. Or is what we call a disjunctive. It's a disjunctive. It means that if I tell you you can pick among these three items, this, or this. This one can work, this one can work, or this one can work. But you don't need all three. And in fact, you're basically saying it's one, but not all three. I understand there's some logic professors in the audience. Hey, Tom, how you doing? We're going to point out that or could mean all three, but it does not necessarily mean all three. It means any one of the three can satisfy the condition. So the United States means a federal corporation or an agency, department, commission, board, or other entity, or an instrumentality of the United States. And by the way, if the United States can mean a federal corporation or an entity of the United States, you're basically saying, if you want to misread this, that the United States can mean an entity of the United States, and that would just become like a bunch of Chinese or Russian nesting dolls. Excuse me, I don't think the Chinese have those yet. I think only the Russians have mastered nesting doll technology. But the point is that the United States means a federal corporation, an agency, department, commission, board, or other entity, or an instrumentality of the United States. So now you might say, but Steve, I still don't get it. What would that mean that the federal United States means a federal corporation? What does that mean? Well, again, as I pointed out to you at the very beginning or the top of this section, it says, as used in this chapter. As used in this chapter. So then the question is, what is this chapter? Because again, these people who make these arguments love to go find some obscure section of code and go, look, I found this one sentence that supports me. And they take that sentence out of context. And we've all seen the joke where people flip the Bible open and read sections in there about, crazy things that are out of context make no sense. Well, 28 U.S.C. Code 3002 is the definitional section of 28 U.S.C. Code 3001. And this chapter provides the exclusive civil procedures for the United States to recover a judgment on a debt or to obtain before judgment on a claim for a debt a remedy in connection with such claim. So what this code section is talking about is what happens if the United States government or some other group inside the United States government, which we'll get to in a second, believes it is owed money by somebody that is not the United States government. Okay? What steps can the United States government take legally to collect debts owed to it? Okay? So under this section of collecting debts, and debts mean any amount that is owing to the U.S. on account of direct loan or loan insured or guaranteed by the United States, or an amount that is owing to the United States on account of a fee, duty, lease, rent, service, blah, 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 and so on. It's talking about debt collection. That's all it is. It's talking about debt collection. And you might say, but Steve, if the United States government is a corporation, that's why it's collecting debts. No, but that's not what this says. It says United States means a federal corporation or an agency, department, commission, board, or other entity of the United States, or an instrumentality of the United States. So it could be any one of those things. And so the one that they get hung up on is the federal corporation. They're saying that the United States is a federal corporation because of this, and they want you to disregard the fact that there's other sections here, and this is only talking about collecting of debts by the United States government. So you again say, Steve, what does a federal corporation mean, though? What does it mean that the United States government could be acting through a federal corporation? Well, these arguments are silly, okay? And that's one of the reasons I have a hard time taking them seriously. But there are grown people out there putting up websites and promoting this stuff. And the sad part is that people fall for it. And most of the people who fall for it are either a little not as tight up here as they should be, or they're desperate. Many people who get desperate start looking for other solutions. And they hope that, hey, maybe the United States government is a corporation and I don't have to answer to it or respond to it. I can stop paying my taxes or something. No. So when we talk about federal corporations that are divisions of the United States government or entities of the United States government, we're talking about any one of the federal agencies or government entities that are defined as corporations. So you can find this all on the internet, government websites, and it lists, for instance, I found a list of government agencies, such as the United States Postal Service, or the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, or the U.S. Agency for Global Media, right? Well, if you look down this list, you'll see that some of them are called things like the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Okay? So if the FDIC decided to take legal action against somebody, and actually did take legal action against somebody, and got a judgment, they would then proceed under U.S. Code 28 subsection 3001, and they would seek to collect a debt as a federal corporation. And when they went to collect a debt, the pleadings would actually say United States versus so-and-so. And they would appear in court and go, Your Honor, we are the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, a federal corporation that has the right to file a lawsuit on behalf of the United States government. And believe it or not, the FDIC does that. They've got attorneys. And when a bank goes belly up and the FDIC gets put on the hook for paying off things to people who are insured, one of the things they'll often do is if they find that there's a culpable party that caused this to happen and they did it illegally, they might be prosecuted and they might also be sued. And that civil action will be brought by an attorney on behalf of the FDI Corporation, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which is a federal corporation acting at the behest of the United States under 28 U.S. Code Section 3001. Other corporations, some of these I've never heard of, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, the National Railroad Passenger Corporation, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, and the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation. So again, if a pension goes belly up and someone determines that it was looted illegally, and the federal government has to pay off people because they guaranteed the pension benefits, then the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation is going to come into court, file an action. It's going to be captioned United States government or United States, versus, and they're going to stand in court and say, Your Honor, we are a federal corporation, which we are empowered to do as the United States under 28 U.S. Code Section 3001. So there are these corporations that are allowed to do this, but the other subsections, like B, which says an agency, department, commission, board, or other entity, is referring to things like the Denali Commission, the Federal Election Commission, the Federal Reserve System, the Federal Trade Commission, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Office of Government Ethics, the Peace Corps, the U.S. Agency for Global Media, and the U.S. Trade and Development Agency, just to name a few. And so if any of those entities believed that they were owed money that was rightfully belonging to the United States, because they are a division of the United States, then they could take that legal action, and they're empowered to do so by 28 U.S.C. 3001 and 3002, which defines those government corporations as being able to stand and bring an action on behalf of the United States. One of the funniest problems here, though, is how often I encounter this issue when it comes to statutory construction. And I've mentioned before statutory construction, and I don't want your eyes to glaze over. All the law students and lawyers in the audience immediately perked up and said, oh my God, statutory construction. No one ever talks about that. But when you read a statute and you construe a statute, okay, you look at what the statute says and what it means. You'd be surprised at how often things such as commas, the word and versus the word or can make a huge difference. So if I said it is illegal and unlawful to drive a car while smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol, that's very different than if I said it is illegal and unlawful to drive a car while smoking marijuana or drinking alcohol. And I assume you don't need to have that explained to you, because one of them says you must be doing them both to be breaking the law. And one says you can be doing either one and that'd be breaking the law. And so that's a huge distinction. So whenever you're reading a statute trying to determine what it means, and you see a list and it says the following are unlawful or illegal, or however it's phrased in your state, the first thing lawyers do is they look at the last one to see if it's preceded by an and or an or. Because if you see 27 things and it says this and this, then you realize, oh, all I got to do is disqualify one of these and I'm probably okay. But if you get to the bottom and it says these or this, and you realize, oh, shoot, any one of these is a problem. So I encounter that a lot when I'm trying to deconstruct what these sovereign citizens are arguing, because they'll often say things like, well, look at this definition. And they will do this with dictionaries. And they'll say, look at this dictionary definition. And it'll say, this word means this, or this. And they'll go, so it means this. And they'll point to the first one. Well, it could also mean the second one, or the third one, or the fourth one, or it might mean the last one. And that's one of the funniest things of all is I've talked before about the grammar and the word Nazis on YouTube and also elsewhere on the internet. and I will use a word. And I've had people say, Steve, you misused that word. So whenever somebody says it, I yank out one of my dictionaries, and I've got a bunch of them. And I will look to see if, in fact, there is a fixed definition of the word and if there's more than one. And surprisingly, there are words out there that have more than one definition. And so, for instance, the other day I used the word promulgate in a video. I used the word promulgate. And I was pretty certain I used it correctly. But as I was editing the video, I actually thought to myself, I got to make sure I used that word right. And promulgate, when I looked it up, it had two definitions. And one merely meant to spread something, to discuss, disperse something, to spread the word about something, okay? The second one was the one I meant, which was when somebody in power enacts a rule or a law that others must follow. Something to that effect. But it referred to somebody making law. They are promulgating law, okay? And so the funny thing is that you can look at that and say, Steve, you used the second definition, but you can't say I'm wrong because I didn't use it as the first definition. Either or are correct, right? It could be this or it could be this. And that's one of the funnier things is when people will argue and say that word you used is wrong, and they point to a dictionary definition, they point to the first definition when down 3 is another definition, and those are obviously disjunctive. It's this, or this, okay? But when it comes to statutes, and you see a list of things, and it goes this, or this, you have to realize, oh, they're not saying that they all have to always be going together. It's any one of them. So with respect to the word or, for some odd reason, sovereign citizens have a real hard time understanding it. But whenever somebody says, but go read this statute and see what it says, and they want you to focus on one little subsection, first thing you do, expand out and read the whole subsection. Then read the title of what it is you're reading and understand why it doesn't apply to regular life. It only applies to debts being collected by the United States government. So there you have it, the problems with the word or and federal statutes. Questions or comments, put them below. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.